Windows goes quantum and Xbox is amused. Happy Friday, friends. This podcast means it's Friday, which is hopefully means you had a wonderful week, right? We are second half of February, but that's a good thing. That is a good thing because that means March is right around the corner and hopefully some longer sunlight days here in the northern hemisphere. If you're in the southern hemisphere, not so much. However, northern folks, we are going to get more sunshine, longer evenings that we can be outside. Hopefully some warmer weather here, but we got to get through the back half of February and we will do it together. Anyways, hopefully you all had a wonderful week. Let's dive into the tech news because Microsoft did some stuff this week. So one of the cool things they have done is they've shipped an update for Windows that is going to make your battery icon start changing colors. This is for, I believe, still only on insiders, but hey, you're probably going to recognize this from mobile devices where if you're in the battery saver mode, it's yellow. If you're charging, it's green. And so it's just another visual indicator. And something, honestly, I never really thought they would bring to Windows, but hey, this is a nice little update. Edge is getting edgier, if you will. Well, they're really just making a little bit faster. So they've made the Edge UI, which are the UI elements, Web UI 2.0, resulting in faster UI navigation. That's really hard to say, AI and UI and all those other U and I's and A's and things and not screw that up. The big announcement this week, realistically, from Microsoft was this guy. So they have a new quantum, what is called a quantum chip, but it's like quantum processor is maybe the correct name. I think it's pronounced Majorana. I don't know how you pronounce this name. Yeah, it's the first one, Majorana 1. And hopefully, fingers crossed, this is like the real deal. Microsoft has had a few paths lead in wrong directions when it comes to quantum stuff in the past. However, so to boil this stuff down, and this stuff is like, there's nerdy stuff, and then there's like literal quantum stuff, and this is like quantum weird, hard things to kind of, if you like time dilation, this is like in that sort of arena. And so I do like time dilation, so maybe this is whatever. Anyways, their big announcement is the stability of the topological qubits is the big announcement, I believe. Like, that's what it all distills down into. And so they've been able to stabilize these things, which have previously been pretty, well, impossible or not known how to do it. And so I think they're up to 8 that they've been able to stabilize. They theoretically believe they can get up to 1 million. And so if they can do that, if it scales as expected or as they're talking about, then that's a really big deal when it comes to quantum computers. However, as of right now, it's all still, theoretical is the wrong word. They've been working on these things for a long time. And so maybe Microsoft's quantum bets are starting to materialize. It's a very long way, I should point out, before this has, I don't want to say real world capabilities, but things that you and I might use them for, right? These things are going to be in supercomputers and labs. The old adage is like, hey, cryptography will be broken as soon as we get a quantum computer because it can do all these things at the same time. And so there's a lot of expectations for what quantum computing can do. However, we have yet to see it materialize in meaningful ways, right? It's still theory craft at this point, but it looks like Microsoft has a breakthrough. And so if they do, that is a very big win for them because the first one to crack quantum computing and can scale it out will have a leg up on the competition is not quite accurate. I think it's a quantum leap over the competition. So there's a lot of companies going after this stuff. Microsoft is making bets and investing. And so here you go. Now, something back a little bit down to earth here is it looks like there's going to be a new PC transfer app coming to Windows. This is, again, like the battery icons, long overdue, but so you'll be able to back up your PC easier. Phones do this very well. You put 2 phones next to each other, at least on iOS side, and you can transfer things. And so PCs are going to be following that. And so transferring to a new PC is about to get a lot easier. So this hasn't been announced yet, but this is a big deal. And so for people who migrate PCs a lot, hey, this is a very good step in the right direction. So you may remember that Microsoft said they're going to keep you signed in starting in February. As it turns out, they're not going to be doing that. That's not the case. Apparently, I think, retracted the document and said this wasn't supposed to be happening. Considering the fact that they had a document up and running, makes me think that maybe this is in the pipeline or there's some sort of wires got crossed about what's actually going to be happening. But anyways, that is not going to be happening. Also, Amazon will be retiring its Android App Store in August. Yeah, the App Store saga continues, right? There's a lot of third-party apps trying to launch, and the Amazon one has been around forever, but they can't make it work, and so here we are with that. So, All right, on to the gaming news. There's a couple of little bit of gaming news bits here. The new Xbox update that allows you to use any external storage device, I shouldn't say any, that's probably not technically accurate, but to use larger external drives is now rolling out. So you can now plug in a hard drive and store things that way. I believe you still cannot going to be able to play off of them. However, the big news in the world of Xbox this week is this. It's Muse. So Muse is this new Xbox AI, the beginnings, I should say, of Xbox AI. So Muse is a Microsoft research project. They worked with Ninja Theory to develop a model that allows you to do prompt input for items in the game. So if you look at this, if you're on YouTube here, this will make a lot more sense. I've also done a much longer video on YouTube about how all this works. But Muse is a model that takes 10 still frames, which is equivalent to, I believe, 1 second of gameplay, and then can extend the gameplay from that frame generation technology. Now, what you can do, as shown here in the videos, is you can say, hey, add a barrel, add a thing, add an F16 to the frame, and then begin to let the computer add that for you dynamically in a way that may not historically have made sense to spend programming time on to experiment. So that's sort of the idea here. This is pretty far off from coming to market, but this is Xbox targeted AI componentry that will be be made more readily available, and it'll be up to developers to make use of it. I bring this up because as of right now, this is not in a state that could be shipped on a next-gen Xbox where an NPU is being utilized. However, this is the first Xbox AI componentry that we have seen, I think, officially from Microsoft in a way that is deliberately targeting games and Xbox content. So it's a pretty big deal, again, but it'll take time for it to materialize. Not as long as a time as the quantum stuff. So other things happening in the world of Xbox, Avowed has launched to all, and so it's doing pretty well on Steam. Very positive reviews, which is always good to see. And it's funny if you go read the negative reviews. There's somebody who's like, this game is not worth your time and already has 21 hours in, and the game released on Steam 2 days ago. So it's like, really? And so anyways, it looks like it's doing well, although it is number 5 now on the Steam charts for sales. It's no longer number 1. It's hard to read into how much that actually impacts things. A Steam seller chart is obviously a good thing, so being higher up is better for Team Xbox at the end of the day as they try to launch more and more titles and make the brand just more sustainable and happy. So there you go. A bunch of questions in the hopper this week. First one up, Alex Chapman says, here's an accessibility question for you. With all these first-party Xbox games coming out, how many of them and which ones are actually playable by blind people such as myself? I will tell you, Alex, I do not know. I know Microsoft is generally more leaning towards and more accepting of accessibility inclusions in games, right? That's a weird way for me to phrase that. They are typically very good about including accessibility features. However, Microsoft doesn't even tell us how many consoles they've sold or how many Game Pass subscribers they have. They definitely do not tell us how much of the accessibility features are being used by gamers. So unfortunately, we don't have that. And he goes on to talk about how the website where this thread is posted over on Thwat.com is not also fully accessible. I will tell you that it is run by a one-man team. So it's just a WordPress, so WordPress kind of ties into the accessibility side. But it's good feedback. It is good feedback. And Rafik, with a bunch of questions into the hopper, he says, I wanted to ask your personal question about the leaking of the Xbox Series S. Yes, that was me. How was that for you? Were you shocked when you got the info and images? And was that the biggest highlight of your channel and your career? So this is the journalism career that I was primarily doing prior to moving back into software development. So the Xbox Series S leak did happen right on this channel. I will tell you from a channel growth perspective, it was pretty darn good. There was a ton of people being added as subscribers. It does still crack me up when people will comment and say, you have no idea about the history of Xbox. Like on recent videos, I'm like, really? I think I do. But anyways, reading the comments is always dangerous. Was it the biggest highlight of your career? Well, the biggest highlight of my journalism career was writing the book Beneath the Surface. The second thing from a breaking news perspective was actually related to HoloLens. So from my personal, the Xbox Series S was big, but to me, the HoloLens, the fact that they canceled what was now known as HoloLens 2, and then they expedited it. So they originally had HoloLens 1, 2, and 3. They canceled 2 and just jumped to 3. And so that was a huge story because that had a lot of implications around what was happening within the industry at that time. And so to me, that's one of the bigger things. I've leaked a bunch of stuff over the years, but that's the one that usually jumps out to me at my head, mostly because it was really hard to stitch that story together. And I talked a lot to Microsoft about that content because there was just a lot of back and forth of me saying like, look, this is happening, and them saying, no, it's not. And then eventually like, okay, you've got a story here and let's figure this thing out. I mean, also the Surface Mini, there was a lot of stuff related to that. I was the first one to get my hands on one of those. So that was out there too. He goes on to ask, he says, have you used Grok 3? I have not. I've used a lot of AI models, but I have not touched that one yet. And he says, do you think that Muse is part of the forward compatibility plan for Microsoft? I don't know if it's part of the plan, but it might be a future component. They actually talk about bringing games forward using this technology, and then there was a lot of rebuttaling in the industry from people who actually do that kind of work and saying Muse is not it. And so it might be. I think it's definitely a tool in the tool chest that might be potential for someday, but as of right now, I don't think so. And then Sydney K 2K says, let's see. He says, happy February, Brad. It is February, Sydney 2K. He says, so what does this super quantum computing chip to mean for us common folk? There's so many unknowns and like hand waviness of quantum computing right now. He says, does it mean we can duct tape it to the back of my Windows 7 computer and have it run Windows 11? Please enlighten me. Predicting things about the future is a very dangerous place because, one, this is recorded, and so somebody could find this in the year 300 from now, or 300 years from now. Like, look at this guy. He didn't even know that quantum computers would allow us to simultaneously generate an apple banana on the back of a F-16 in your front yard. Like, some of the things we hypothesize that, like, hey, it's going to help us decode the genome sequences faster than we currently can now, and help us better understand things at the molecular level, and help us like solve cancer and build better drugs and those sorts of things. And then there's also like, hey, it'll break cryptography. It'll allow us to do new compression algorithms. It'll help us understand the universe. But these things are all theoretical. So that is why I hesitate. I'm not against the concept of like trying to chase down quantum computers and understanding the most fundamental elements of the universe, and then controlling those bits for our own domain. Like, that is super powerful and a really cool thing that we could do. The problem is we think we know what we can use this computing power for, but until we can actually do it, right, then we don't quite know. Like, look how long it's taken us to get to AI, right? These large language models. Would quantum computing help us get there faster? We don't really know. We sometimes seem to think that we're at the edge of what x86 computing can do, and now we got to move over to ARM and GPU and other ways of compute. And so it's a lot of theoretical things, but as of right now, like, you can say, well, is it going to allow you to run Crysis, the latest game, on an Atom? Like, we don't know. Like, I don't think it's going to be targeted at traditional computing. But again, there's too much until we have something that is stable and scalable and mass produced. We're still just saying, okay, in theory, this is what we can do. And so I don't have a great answer. I mean, you can go read about all the things it might do, but there's nothing that it's doing right now. And oh God, it always makes PR. It always makes, I think it was IBM who does it. There is something out there that says this quantum computer can do this calculation in 8 seconds that would take a classically trained computer, a classic computer, millions of years. That is like one of these examples. However, that test, that benchmark, if you will, was explicitly written to not be possible on an x86 or ARM or traditional computing device, and only work on a quantum computing device. So it's not like a real world application. It's like saying, hey, I've got a baseball bat and it's really bad at fishing, but look at this fishing rod, it's really good at fishing. That's a weird example that just came out of my noodle. But like, you see what I mean? Like, if you designed a test for a computer, it better be good at it, and then a computer that's not designed for that is not going to be good at it. So yeah, just take everything with a little bit of quark, I should say, not quirks. Well, they are quirks. They're quirky quirks, right? A quark is one of those fundamental elements that we observe. Or you can only observe them once. I don't know. Like, when you get down to that level of like stuff, like, you can observe these things, but then you've altered the state. So anyways, like, this stuff blows my mind. I try to read about it and understand it. It gets nerdy, like protons and the Higgs boson and like all that stuff down at that level. Like, I read about it, I'm like, yeah, like, all right, okay, cool. Next, I'm going to go see if my mechanical keyboard sounds thocky, like two parts of the brain. Anyways, wonderful question. Abdel says, will Steam, with all of Sony's games, run on the next-gen Xbox in 2026? Well, 2026 is still theoretical. We don't know that for sure. it sounds like that might be a possibility. We don't know enough until Microsoft formally announces their plans. We have to understand. Here's the other thing too. I can't imagine they wouldn't want this, but like, would Steam allow this, right? Steam hasn't really like pushed back on anybody else running their platform and making them money. I mean, there's a theory that Steam could, like Sony could be like, hey, we're going to put our games on Steam, but you can't let it run on Xbox consoles. Like, that's a thing, I guess, that could in theory happen. But again, until these things are available, we won't fully know. But it sounds like Microsoft is going to be making some quantum leaps in terms of what you can do on the next-gen console, not necessarily in terms of power. Because one of the things we can determine from this console generation specifically is that having the most powerful console that eats monsters for breakfast, although I think that was the Xbox One X tagline, eats monsters for breakfast. I don't think it was a tagline. Was it like Matt Booty or somebody said it? Doesn't matter. Power doesn't win. Like, power has to be good enough. Nintendo has certainly proven that, although Nintendo has a killer catalog that's locked exclusive to their hardware, which is why they continue to do super duper well. Anyways, a little bit tangent there. Next question. Oh, Hoity says, can you help me? Okay, I can do a little bit here. Can you help me understand the $400 price difference between Surface Pro or a laptop, Intel versus ARM? The units in theory are identical other than the CPU. I can't believe the ARM CPU is $400 less than the Intel CPU. Is Microsoft lowering the cost of them to get them to market, or what? He says, I buy 30 to 40 a year for my job. That $400 makes a price difference. It absolutely does make a difference, especially at that scale. 30 and 40 is a decent sized purchasing every year. Here's what I can tell you from a matter-of-fact perspective, from a corporate perspective, a corporate buyer's perspective. If you are going to your Microsoft rep, and the problem I'm going to struggle with here is I don't know what at volume you're going to get the discount. Intel chips can be discounted when purchased in volume. The ARM chips, nope. You are paying that. So these Intel devices, I'm trying to remember, was it J.C. Penney, and then the Apple guy went in there and Ron Johnson went in there and completely screwed it up. Gosh, if you recognize that analogy, you have been to business school. Anyways, Intel chips can get some pretty hefty discounts on the corporate side when you're buying in volume. The ARM chips absolutely cannot. So if you're buying 40 a year and you have a history with your vendor, you might be able to get some knocked off. However, if you go buy 40 of the ARM, you will not get it knocked off. So Intel is just banking on their old blue mentality of like, hey, people are going to buy us and they're going to buy us and we'll get them the discount and they'll feel good. Right? Remember, a good negotiation is where both sides don't leave unhappy. And so Intel will drop their price. Consumers, or not the consumer, the corporate customer will get a discount and make it feel better. So it might be only $200. So that's the deal. That is the deal. There's no discounts available on scale on corporate at the ARM side, but there is on the Intel side. From the consumer perspective, it's hard to justify. I encourage people to check out ARM. Corporate ARM purchases, you have to do your own research. I cannot help you there because some people have line of business applications that are going to be tailored and they're not going to work on ARM. I know it's 2024 and some people are still stuck on old stuff, but there's manufacturing clients out there who have a specific application that's running on Windows XP and they pray every day when the sun goes down that machine does not turn off. Those scenarios exist in more places than we probably are comfortable admitting. So make sure your devices all can run ARM. But I get why. I suspect Hoity, and I'm making an assumption here, probably wants to buy the Intel for that exact reason. It's like, look, we have a fleet of these things. They work. The customers will be, the client or, the management will be happy, right? If you have Intel, just buy Intel. We know it works. There's no question about it. But, $400 times 30 adds up. It adds up. So good question. All good questions. Actually, there's more questions. I forgot. Merdad says, what, without a compelling mobile platform, how does Microsoft expect Copilot to rival Gemini and Apple Intelligence in the consumer market? I don't think they care. That's such a terrible thing to say. They're shoving it into Outlook. They're shoving it in all of their consumer endpoints. Microsoft knows the consumer is probably not going to be paying for this stuff. And so they're more focused on getting enterprise hooked on Copilot, right? Hooked on Copilot worked for me. Was that hooked on phonics? Jeez, man, there are some throwbacks in this references. Hooked on Copilot worked for me. Anyways, man, my neurons are connecting today in weird and funky ways. But that is what their expectation is. Get them hooked on the enterprise side, and then that's that. Microsoft on the consumer side is a love story that does not ever end well, right? Every single consumer product that has Microsoft is pretty much launched, except the Xbox, which still has a chance of going down this rabbit hole, just has not worked out well. Zune, Media Center, the Windows Phone saga, like it all just ends in disappointment. Microsoft can't focus on that. It doesn't work. Xbox is their last bastion. Even Surface these days is much more tailored to corporate side than the consumer side. So there you go. And Bartok says, is Copilot for consumers still a thing at Microsoft? What are very similar questions. I wonder if one generated the other. Or will it die? I don't think it will die. Microsoft knows the power of branding, right? There's branding wars going on right now, whether or not you realize it, right? You have Gemini, you have Copilot, you have ChatGPT, you have Salesforce, whatever theirs are. Jira that we use at work has one. It's called, like, I think it's Rovo. There's tons of these brands that are trying to get market share and, more importantly, mind share, so that when you think AI, you think Copilot, you think Gemini, you probably don't think Siri, Apple Intelligence, right? You try to think of those things, and that's what they want right now. And that eventually the monetization will continue to compound over time. So there you go. That wraps it up for this week. That is as I look at the thing, a 21 minute and 38 second podcast. And so hopefully everybody had a wonderful week. We'll be back. And by we, I mean I don't know who we is here. We'll be back next week. Hopefully you had a wonderful week, and catch all of you right back here next time. Make sure to keep it subscribed here. The only BS on this podcast is me.